Good morning, everybody. We're coming to you live online from Congregation Brith Shalom. We have a magnificent group of people here this Sunday morning, and it's really great to be able to share a word of Torah on this past week's Parsha, Parsha's Vayeitzei. And we know that this past week's Parsha tells us about how Yaakov was traveling, and he arrived at the place, and our sages tell us that place was Mount Moriah. It was the same place where his father, Isaac, was brought as a offering on the binding of Isaac, right? And it's a very special place because that turns out later was the place of the Holy Temple, today known as the Western Wall, as the only remaining wall of the Temple Mount, of the Temple. And what happened there? So he goes to sleep. It gets dark, and he goes to sleep. And it says, Vayikach me'avnei hamakom, and he takes from the stones of the place, of that place, and he puts them around his head. And Rashi explains that he was afraid of wild animals that may be in the area, so he was sort of protecting himself. Now, Rashi also explains that all of the stones were arguing with one another. They were arguing with one another, saying, I want the tzaddik, I want the righteous person, Jacob, to rest his head on me. And later on, if you see a few psukim later, I think it's verse number 18, it says that Vayikach, and in the morning when Jacob arose, when he woke up, it says, Vayikach esa'ev asher samar rashos. He took the stone that he placed at his head. And we know he didn't place a stone, he placed stones. The Rashi teaches us from this change of terminology from stones to stone that these 12 stones converged and became one. They became one stone. We see a very similar incident with Abraham. Abraham was negotiating a purchase of a piece of property to bury his wife Sarah, and after they work out an agreement, then he pays for it. What does the Torah tell us? Vayakam ste Ephron. And the field of Ephron was elevated. What's elevated? What changed? Well, the ownership changed. So we see here, in these two stories, and we'll see many more examples, that there is a spiritual component to everything physical. Right? You can take anything physical, has its physical function, its materialistic value, but it also has a spiritual component that is added to it. And it depends on how much spirituality we connect with. It's the amount of spirituality that it will reflect. Abraham, who was so holy, when he acquired the field became holy. It got uplifted. From the lowly Ephron, who sold it to him, it was just a field. But now it became something greater, something spiritual. Jacob took stones, it was mere stones. But now it's no longer mere stones. Now they became something holy. They became something, the whole nature, the physical nature of them, the physical characteristics were changed. And now they became one. How many times are we capable of identifying something physical that can turn into something spiritual? You know, right now, this video is being broadcast on Facebook. Live, right now. So people around the world can tune in and watch this video live. And in fact, there's someone from Israel, who I see here, Camden, who's watching this video from Jerusalem, right? I believe that this is using a physical potential and transforming it to something spiritual. It could be used for something holy. It could be used for something unholy. Right? You could take a car. A car could be used to show off, to be arrogant, to be braggadocious about how wealthy you are, or it could be used as a vessel of kindness. Right? So the same things that we use for physical can also be used for spiritual. We see many times in the Torah that we have this challenge of whether or not we're going to rely on our own physical acquisitions, or we're going to release that physical to let it become something spiritual. For example, we have the mitzvah in the Torah which tells us that in the 7th year, in the sabbatical year, don't work your fields in the land of Israel. And God promises us, if you don't work your fields, I will give you a triple crop in the 6th year. You take off the 7th year is for God, don't work God's field, you're going to have a triple crop. The 6th year will become enough for the 6th year, 7th year, and 8th year, till you get back on your schedule of production. Now, we can't make such a promise. This is one of the proofs, by the way, of the truth of the Torah being a God-given document, because no human being can write such a thing. No human being can give such a promise. I know people who own fields in Israel, and they will tell you that it's like clockwork. It's amazing. The 6th year, you have a triple crop. The only problem is you have to believe enough in the Almighty, in the spiritual realm, to allow yourself to, like, sort of relinquish that power of your physical, right? So the 7th year you take off, you'll get the 6th year blessing. Triple crop. I have a friend of mine in Dallas who told me that he spoke to a non-Jewish ingredient, someone who deals with what's that? Spices. And he said that he gets different spices from different countries, right? So every country, he said, has one spice that is their specialty because of the soil, because of the moisture, because of the the terrain, the all of these different virtues. In different lands, you have different things. And he was telling me about what this individual, the spice professional, Mr. Spice, we'll call him, right? Was telling him about all these different countries. There are countries that when a child is born, they plant a certain, I think it's cinnamon, right? And that becomes their retirement fund, because they grow that tree, and then they start pulling out all of their investment when they reach the age of retirement. That's when because that country, that's their specialty. It's their specialty. This guy, so he asks this non-Jewish Mr. Spice, we'll call him, right? He asks him, tell me, what is the Israeli spice?
Cilantro.
So he says cilantro. Correct. Cilantro is the spice. And he asked him, tell me, do you have a regular production every year? So he says it's very interesting. Every 6th year, this is a non-Jewish guy telling him, he says every 6th year, the manufacturer says that he has a bumper crop, and if I pay in advance, he'll keep it in storage, but send it to me on the 7th and the 8th years. He says every 6, or not every 6 years, but every 7 years, that same cycle happens, where he gets this extra crop, and he says that next year I'm not going to send you anything, but I'll store it for you if you. We see this is a reality. We see also there's a mitzvah in the Torah to give a tithe. Right? It's a biblical commandment. You earn $100, you give away 10. Our sages tell us that 10 doesn't even belong to you. Right? God really would give you $90. He gave you another 10 so that you be his messenger to distribute it properly. You be sort of act godly and give away that 10%. So it doesn't even belong to you. Charity is beyond that 10%. It's two different things. And yet we see there's a promise by our sages that if someone gives a fifth, which is 20%, they're guaranteed great wealth. Guaranteed great wealth. How can they make such a promise? How can there be such a promise? I'm giving away and I get more. How many times have we experienced that our finances took us, we put in our regular monthly paycheck, and sometimes it has much more blessing than others. Sometimes it's gone in no time. Well, we got a parking ticket, and we had to fix the plumbing, and we had this expense, the air conditioner went out. We have all these things. And other times, there's tremendous blessing. Right? Because when we are able to live in a spiritual realm where 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 equals whatever God wants it to be. We're able to take things that are physical, that are tangible, and they become something spiritual. There's this term in American modernism, modernity, let's call it, that is financial security. What is financial security? financial security.
What you believe it is.
What's that?
What you believe it is.
Well, so many people think is I'm going to put away enough money for one day where sort of God is not going to be able to take care of me, but I'll take care of myself. If a tragedy happens, if this happens, what happens to God? God disappears? Right? So again, there's nothing wrong with having a savings account. We learned that, I think, by the way, this is my opinion, that we learned the first savings account in the world was Joseph in Egypt, where Joseph, reveals to Pharaoh, you're going to have 7 years of plenty, and then you're going to have 7 years of famine. So what did he say? Create a savings account. Put away, your extra during these 7 years, so that when it comes to 7 years of famine, you'll have what to live on. So there is such a concept, but the question is, how much do we rely on it? And how much do we rely on the hand of God? And we have to recognize that the more we put ourselves in the hand of God, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have careers. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have jobs. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be financially responsible. But we should still live with that presence of mind that the Almighty is indeed in charge. And the Almighty is able to bring us success from nothing. How many people do we know that never finished high school and are billionaires? And how many people do we know that have doctorates and have law degrees and can't support themselves? Right? So it doesn't go like King Solomon says, Lo lechacham lechem. Just because you're wise doesn't mean you'll have bread. Just because you're so smart doesn't mean you'll have all of this success. But when we put ourselves into the hand of Hashem, right, then what we do is we take that potential, we take that greatness, and now elevate it to a higher level. And now we can see that, we put in a small effort, we put in the greatest effort we can, and the results could be incredible. Right? Way beyond what we had initially thought possible. So I think this is one of the lessons we learned from these stones that now took a more spiritual existence. I remember when I was a little child, I actually bought this because it came out on CD not long ago. There was a record, right? A record that was called The Mitzvah Tree. Right? And I bought it for my children because for me it was nostalgic to hear it again. Even as something I heard when I was 3 years old, 4 years old. But one of the stories they have is someone who's going to the supermarket to buy produce, to buy fruits. And when they get to the apples, right, it sort of discusses the conversation these apples are having. And everyone is saying, oh, pick me, pick me, pick me. Because I know that I'm going to be taken to a Jewish home where someone's going to make a blessing on me. And I want someone to make a blessing on me. Right? Versus other apples, right, that perhaps someone will take to their home and not make that blessing. So it's sort of the spiritual components of these apples are fighting. I want to be a tool through which someone can connect to the Almighty. There is a spiritual component to things that are physical. We have to connect to it. And we have to take those physical things and elevate them. All of the physical things that we can have a car that operates on mitzvahs. Right? Yeah, of course it needs gasoline, and you need to. I remember what? Right, exactly. Pour in mitzvahs in the gas tank, right? But really, there are things that it's above the call of nature. At times, there are things that can happen, things that do happen. It depends on how high of a level we will ascend to. So we're going to sign off here, our dear friends online. Thank you for joining us. Please don't forget to click like and share. And we're going to continue. You're welcome to join us here live every Sunday. We're going to continue with the in-person part of today's class, which is Pirkei Avot. We're going to continue with the first chapter, the 6th Mishnah, here at Congregation Brith Shalom, every Sunday at 11 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a remarkable week, everybody. Shavua Tov.